Welcome everyone to the Weekly Coop. I got a really cool guest today. We're back with healing modalities and just ways of clearing out stress levels. We got a stress expert that understands, different modalities and different methods of working with stress. And we have a special guest from, I believe you are in the Vegas area. Go ahead, introduce yourself, name, profession, and kind of what you do.
Great. Well, Coop, thanks for having me, and glad to be here with your audience. And yeah, let's get back to well-being. Let's get back to health. There's so much going on in the world, but I think the reason why I'm here is because I have a background in well-being. I'm in the health world. My name is Sara Nakamura, and I have been a massage therapist. I've been in, the health and nutrition world for over 20 years. And it's funny because, a lot of times we just go with like, what's the resume of all the things and accomplishments that we have? But essentially, you know, our well being is so important, and we've all had our ups and downs with it. And for me, it's just really been this place of what do I do next? And I was in a place at one point in my career that I was so stressed out, I didn't know what to do. So I took all of the training and all the wellness that I knew, I compiled it into a book and created a book called Stress Out and Don't Know What to Do. And so I'm an accomplished author. I speak internationally. Uh, so I mean, that's my background in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Let's get into the book. What inspired you to write this best-selling book? Stressed out and don't know what to do.
You know, I walked into work one day. I was working in the corporate world. I was in corporate food and beverage, and it's a 24 tower town, Las Vegas, and people come here for to relieve some stress, to blow off some steam. And originally I'm from Hawaii, which second place where people go to relax and just have a different chapter in their lives, whether it be just to be silly and do something totally different, or just to relax on a beach and drink some mai tais, right?
Yeah.
So I would watch all of these people just relax and have a good time, but I'd also watch them pick up where they left off as soon as they got back home. And their stress levels were just insane. And, one time I walked into work and there was so much happening. We were opening up a third Starbucks location, and I had just had it. We were working 12-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week for months.
Hmm.
And I watched one of my coworkers totally burning out, and she couldn't even take a reprieve. She sat down to have a cup of coffee. Our boss walked in, he started yelling at her, and in that moment, she couldn't defend herself. And I stepped in and had to diffuse the situation. But I ended up quitting that day because I too was burnt out and I had no idea. And so essentially, what happens is, we don't know what the next right step is.
Hmm.
And so I recognized that not in the moment, but afterwards. So it took me about 10 years of getting into massage therapy, like
Hmm.
health and nutrition. I became a personal trainer. I got certified in, nutrition and health, all these different things because I was trying to figure out me and trying to figure out like where my next good step was. And so I compiled all of these different things and then realized that I was feeling better. I was doing things for myself, but before I was doing things for everybody else. And I think that's what
Hmm.
happens to a lot of us. We look externally and want to help others, but if we're not filled up, if our cups aren't overflowing, we're just totally depleted and we're burnt out. So, I had all of this going on for the last decade or so, and then the pandemic, hit, and one of my colleagues in massage therapy, she lost hope. She ended up taking her own life, and she left 3 children behind,
Hmm.
and that was heartbreaking, not just to our community, but me personally. I'd worked with her for a decade, and I couldn't help her. You ever feel like you're lost and you know that you can help somebody, but you're just not sure how to.
Oh my
And
goodness,
that's
yes.
yeah, that's what ended up happening. And so I just said, hey, let's compile all of these techniques. Let's distill it
Yeah.
down, make them 2 minute, quick and easy. Just tools for somebody just to give to somebody else or to use themselves. Create this tool belt where any situation that we're involved in, whether it be exhaustion, overwhelm, burnout, we have these tools. So I compiled it, put it into a book, and just started telling everybody about it. So that's how the book came about.
Hmm. Man. Yeah, man, there's just so many things that you said there that I think can really resonate with a lot of people. And, it's interesting. So you said you were born in Hawaii and, you currently live in Vegas, but you moved to Vegas, at a certain point in your life. Those are, at least to me, I've only been to Vegas. I've actually never been to Hawaii. It would be a great experience, I think, to see that. But to me, it looks like a dichotomy of two different, like, just cultures. And you talk about how, people, when people unwind in Vegas, it's like entertainment, you know, uh, poker, betting, gambling. Like, I feel like it's still like, I wouldn't say a lot. I guess maybe it's not stress, but you're still spiking that just a crazy rush of just dopamine. And, like, I mean, even like, I mean, because gambling is a stressful activity. Like, you're still getting that stress level up because you're throwing money into the mix and you don't know if you're going to win or going to lose, and um when you're looking at that versus that Hawaii, you know beaches. Yeah. So maybe you're sipping on Mai Tais. Maybe you're doing, yoga, like, on the beach with people, or, so with that dichotomy, I guess, what have you just, like, witnessed, or what do you understand maybe the similarities between those two cultures and, like, those two environments? What are the two maybe similarities, and what are, the differences between the two, if you could name, like, one big uh difference and one big similarity?
Well, first of all, you cut out just a little bit, but I think I got the gist of your question. Is that, again, when people come to Vegas, you're blowing off steam, you kind of have angst, maybe you have some underlying, anger or frustration or something like that, and you're just bursting to get it out.
Hmm.
And, like you said, laying down bets and, staying out all night, dancing and partying and doing all those fun things. And, that's a way for people just to let go. And
Hmm.
on the other side of that can be the relaxation, the calmness, the maybe have some underlying sadness, something that's going on where you're just like something's just not fitting right, or you're just wanting to get away. And
Mm.
so again, those two things can be completely different. And yet that underlying commonality is letting go of the things that aren't working in your life.
Mm.
And when people do that, it's a fantastic thing. But it's when they are out of that environment, when they go back to their norm, when they go back to the day to day and go right back to that stress cycle. And the
Mm.
stress cycle is essentially just the things that we do in our lives that just compile on and compile on. And it can be little aggravations, little things that kind of build up and lead to, yelling at your spouse or not taking out the trash because they wanted you to, and you're going, no, just because. Right. Or if it's, sleeping in later than normal and it's not getting the tasks done you want to or need to or said you were going to do. So all those
Mm.
things get compiled up. And the challenge is we're just not either letting it go or we're not getting to the root of the challenge or problem. And
Right.
in the book I talk about the stress cycle, and stress isn't linear, and stress doesn't just start coming up all of a sudden, start creeping up and you see it and you go, hey, here comes stress. That's level 1. Level 2 is identifying it and then just letting it go. It doesn't work that way. I'd love for it to be that simple and linear, but here's the thing, it comes from any direction. And I
Hmm.
made it simplified in the book. So it's on page 25 of my book, Stressed Out and Don't Know What to Do. And we talk about this, it being a cycle, and it can be triggered by what's going on in your body. Are you feeling tired or exhausted? Is it an emotional drain? So the E. Is it an action? Did you get something accomplished? Did you not get something accomplished? That adds stress to your life.
Mm.
And and then also, what's the trigger? Is it triggered by an outside force or an inside force? Is it something that's internal that you're saying to yourself, or is it a loved one, a spouse, a colleague, a coworker, saying something to you that's being stressful to you, to your body? And so it kind of bounces around. It doesn't go, again, one, two, three, ABC. It can be anywhere, and it can start at any time. And that trigger is what really sets anything off for you. And when we start recognizing our triggers, and that's how we coach our clients, is what are the identifying triggers? And it's not just, the alarm going off in the morning and you're, cranky. It's beneath the surface. It's what's been going on for you for years and years and years. And, from age, 0 to 7, we're that sponge. Those kids are just taking in everything. We're creating our receptors and neural pathways, to really become who we are. And then when we become from 7 to teenage years, we're creating our values and all the things that we do and how we cope with things into adulthood. And usually what happens is there's something that's gone on at a very young age, and we kind of look back at that and not changing it, but we create a different connection to it. And what can it teach us? And it allows us to move forward. So that way it just negates the triggers and it diffuses it right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Trigger points, yeah, are so key. And when you talk about root cause, that is what a lot of medical practices are that are not Western medicine. I think Western medicine is all just about, how can we just get rid of the symptom, for the short term, but there's no long term benefit or long term gain. So when you go to the root, which one of my favorite um, medicines that I've researched, not in full depth, but I have friends who are into Chinese medicine, and what they go by is it's medicine on a cellular level, like what is going on in each and every cell. And it makes so much sense because we're made up of trillions of cells, and it's like that is the building block of our whole existence, is cells and atoms and just everything. These little microscopic orbs that you can't even see unless you put it under a microscope. So it's very important to go to the trigger and to go to the source and heal the source. And so when you were talking just now, you kind of discussed stress cycle. So, what is the exact stress cycle? If I guess maybe you didn't fully detail it out just now, can you kind of enlighten our audience on what the stress cycle is?
Yeah. So, well, let me go back to the book. And, when I talk about, I don't know if your audience, I know you're going to be listening, but also if you are doing
The YouTube,
the
yeah.
YouTube, yeah, if you're on YouTube, you can see this stress
Hmm.
cycle, and let me describe it for you. Again, it's a circle, and when we have our thoughts, so our mind, our cognition,
Hmm.
it's about our thoughts are our decision makers, and and how we worry, and just that cognitive part of us. When a trigger happens in our thoughts, a lot of times people go, okay, you have a thought, then you have a feeling, then you have an action. And science will support that. But also, if you take a look at, certain things that happen in our lives, say you're driving down the street and an incident happens. Well, it's so fast. Things happen so fast on that neurological level, like you're talking about those little microscopic atoms, right? But what do we recognize first? Sometimes we recognize a feeling. Oh my gosh, that hurt, or, like that was painful, or I noticed my breath, I noticed my heart palpitations, right? That physical feeling. Sometimes that's what talks to us first, because every body talks, right? And
Hmm.
if we're listening to our body, we have this understanding of, is it a feeling that's going on, or um, are we feeling an emotion behind something? As just I was talking about, if you're coming to Vegas, sometimes people are just having that low key frustration. Like, I'm frustrated with my life, I'm frustrated with my boss, I'm frustrated with, so much that goes on. You want to relieve it. And so
Yeah.
that feeling creates an action of like, let me jump on a plane, let me go someplace else. Or, let me, go hang out with my friends and talk about it and, have a couple drinks. Whatever that is for you, sometimes that feeling creates an action. And so if we get stuck in this box of a thought creates a feeling which creates an action, then we're searching for thoughts and we're only
Mm.
going one way. So if we go in a different way and start recognizing what our body is saying to us, and we recognize the triggers, like I was saying, and recognize, hey, every time I, you know, XYZ, fill in the blank, right? Every
Hmm.
time, I tell my spouse that, I'm hungry, they always go, "What do you want for dinner?" And you go, "I don't know. What do you want for dinner?" And it creates an argument, right? I mean, that's a
Right.
classic
Hmm.
one amongst couples, right?
Yeah.
And, or even, colleagues at lunchtime, right? What are we going to order out today? So, you can take it from any perspective and
Hmm.
just realize that if you put yourself into a box, then you only have a small window to create something different in your life. But if we break that cycle, if we break, you know, that um, that pattern, if you will, we can break it from the inside out. And what happens when we create it from the inside out? It creates life, right? But if something breaks from, think of an egg. If you break, a little chicken egg or any kind of egg, and you break it yourself, that life can't sustain. It dies. And so we have to do it ourselves, or else it becomes detrimental to us. So that's why I came up with the stress cycle, because it's an easy way to explain it and an easy way to go, oh, I lead with my feelings, or I lead with my thoughts, or hey, I just take action without thinking about things. And once you
Mm.
recognize what your primary way of interpreting information is, or your primary way of interacting in the world, then you can go further. And so we challenge you to figure that out for yourself.
So this stress cycle diagram, that was something that you created?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Thank
Um,
you. I couldn't find something that was so simple, but explained it so well, because you know I did so much research when I was trying to articulate this, because I'm a feeler. And for feelers to start to articulate and express ourselves in words, it's more challenging. And it took me a long time to kind of really figure out what this diagram would look like to make it simple and explain it to people. So
mm,
it's beat. If you look at the diagram, it's your body, your emotion, your actions, and your thoughts beat.
hmm.
So we beat the stress cycle.
Yeah, yeah. I think of it as that mind body soul connection, and how they're all integrated together, and they all speak to you at some point. Just depends on when you choose to listen to it. And people usually don't listen to it till the body speaks up, because that's like the last. You know, that is the last stage of your soul trying to talk to you. As a board certified therapeutic massage therapist, and you've been doing this for nearly 2 decades, which is amazing. What are some common misconceptions around like stress management? Because there are a lot of misconceptions, and I think obviously you being the stress expert, I would love to just hear your opinion about that. And actually, I mean, I'm sure not even opinion, but like the facts, because you've studied this, so you get it.
So I think the thing that's really important to remember is that everybody has stress. It's what
Hmm.
we do with the stress that matters. And stress has been normalized in mainstream life. And yes, we need to have it as a component to either motivate us or to do something different in our lives. But the amount of stress that we're under every single day, every single moment, that's where it's not normal, because it's natural. It's a natural thing to have stress. But we've normalized the amount of stress that we're taking on. And I think that's the misconception, is that people look around, look at each other and go, hey, you have some stress, this happened in your life, and it's tough, but here's how I'm stressed out. And it's like this badge of honor of like how much stress I can handle, and how many less hours of sleep I can run on, and how many cups of coffee I can have. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
I compare my normal stress level to your normal stress level, and I want to win because it's like, look at the crap I'm dealing with.
Hmm.
And that's what happens a lot of times. And that's just not a natural thing as a human being.
Yeah.
We're meant to thrive, we're meant to be in flow, we're meant to just take on the good things as well as the bad things.
Right.
But if we look at it and not as bad or good, but is it effective, or is it not effective? So if we realize that the perception of the amount of stress that we have, that's not normal.
No.
And I want people to understand that that's where we can shift, and that's where we can let it go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of stress as like the people that try to outdrink or the people that try to compare stress levels, or the people that try to uh outdrink someone else. Those people that are like, yeah, I can outdrink you, and then you're putting more alcohol in your body, you're putting more poison. It's like, who can put more poison in their body? It's it's somewhat of a toxic cycle. And it's fascinating because the way we look at stress now, it's almost, I believe in, so I'm a big believer in balance. And I know that like you've done your research and you obviously have this understanding through just like where I'm at with my research and who I've worked with and those things. I find it interesting that like stress is necessary only in certain situations. I think stress can motivate action, and like you're going to have stress every day, just from the sense of like when we woke up in cave times, like we were stressed because we were worried about trying to get food, and like or being mauled by a saber-toothed tiger type thing. But it's interesting because like when you're constantly seeking stress, your body's going to get overwhelmed. Then that's how you get the anxiety, the depression, and then that's how you have that shutdown of your nervous system, and then that's when you get sick. And that sickness can be different things. It could be the flu, it could be respiratory, it could be anything. But then like that we have this other side of the spectrum now where cortisol is kind of the buzzword now when it comes to stress. We talk about cortisol levels because that's how you measure the adrenal glands and how you measure stress levels with people. And it's almost like trying to minimize that as much as possible, which I do think there is some good there. But it's almost like if you're trying to micromanage your cortisol to that degree, you're almost going to turn into like, oh, I'm stressed out about how much stress I have. Like you're constantly trying to read that, right? It's like looking at your weight on a scale constantly, with how much you weigh, and you're obsessing over that. So I think, just not to get too off topic, but I see now in society how we try to dichotomize stuff. And I think even stress now, people try to like overthink the whole aspect. And it's like there are stress levels at times where it's just going to naturally happen, but the unnatural stress forms that you bring upon yourself, that's what we need to get rid of. And it's like, is coffee always bad? No. But if you're drinking 4 cups a day, that's going to ruin your nervous system. But like if you want to have like a cup of coffee every now and then, with a little caffeine, that's okay. Like it's just, to me, it's just like the balance side of things. That's just where I look at it. And I appreciate you talking about like your side of like your research and those sorts of things.
Yeah, there's so much in what you said just there. And going back to the caveman days, when we are, trying to really just be a human being
Hmm.
in modern times, we don't have to worry, most of us don't have to worry if there's, air conditioning or heater in our caves
Hmm.
because we live in a dwelling where we can touch a button, we can change it. We can throw
Hmm.
on a coat, or we can, drink a glass of ice water. We can regulate different things that we couldn't back then. But what happens is our nervous systems are stuck on the on position of safety, on the
Mm.
on position of am I being hunted down, on the on position of always being on alert. And we don't turn those cycles off. We don't turn those switches off. And that's the biggest thing that's going on for us right now. We're stuck in that mammalian brain of we're not okay. And we bring that into modern times of, we check our social media and we don't have enough, response from a post or something like that. And then
Hmm.
we feel not okay. But going back to that cortisol and going to the dopamine, going to all of the stress hormones or all of the hormones in general, we like that dopamine fix and hit
Yeah.
and go, we need it. It makes us feel more energized and alive because coffee just isn't doing it anymore. Like you said, you're in that fourth cup of coffee and it's not doing anything for you. Why not? Because it's been normalized. If you
Yeah.
have it all the time, it's not going to feel great anymore. So you have to strip down all the crap and get back to that, down to that base level. Again, stress can be great because when I'm working out, I'm stressing my body in a good
Exactly.
way. And
Hmm.
when I have, I've got a monitor, and it goes, okay, Sarah, you're stressing, on your body for 20 minutes, and it's at a 9 out of 10. Yeah, because I'm doing cardio. Right? And so that's a great thing.
Mm.
And that's when stress levels are good. And that's when, when we go down that granular level and go to the cellular level and go, hey, let's take the minute numbers and graphs and different things and put it into a perspective and go, oh, hey, this baseline is different than what it was yesterday, was what it was a month ago, and we're improving. We can do that these days because we have the technology. But to simplify it, how are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling cranky? Are you not getting along and not having communication with the people that you love? Like, that's the real test. And I
Yeah.
love how much data we have these days. But when we're not just stripping it down and just being in that calm place and going, what's important to me?
Yeah.
That's where we, to me, that's where, when we get back to that place, that's what's effective. It's not, all of the things that everyone else has to give to us as far as tasks or, things to do. It's, where do I want to be? Where can I be?
Yeah, 100%. And to kind of bridge into this question, for those leaders who are stressed out and are facing that burnout, it's definitely happened to me a lot, especially in college when I was doing so many different things. What's the best way to start your day? I mean, the way I do it is, I meditate, I do self Reiki sometimes, I do stretching sometimes, meditation is always the key for me in the mornings, but I definitely will do some light stretching or journaling as well, when I'm consistently doing it for sure. But what is the best way to start the day, at least like in your eyes, or from your studies and those things, that leaders who are facing burnout can take away from this?
In simple terms, keep it simple. And really what I mean by that is there's so much in simplicity, but sometimes it takes a lot of management and a lot of time and effort to make it simple. And what I've come to the conclusion is what works for you. And when you figure out what works for you, that's when you are consistent. That's when you do it all of the time. So what I did was, to make it simple, is I came up with this quick and easy routine that takes 15 to 20 seconds for each exercise, and it takes less than 10 minutes for your morning routine. And it's not even 10 minutes consecutively, it's 10 minutes throughout your entire morning to get you going. And I did a whole training on it, so you can go to freegiftfromsara.com and you'll get the training. But in a nutshell, as soon as I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I tell myself I'm having a great day today. or some kind of mantra, depending on what's happening in my life. Sometimes if I'm starting to feel it under the weather, and I know that the seasons are changing, and my voice is starting to get scratchy, whatever it is, I say I'm healthy today. So that quick and easy simple mantra, and I go, I'm healthy today, I'm healthy today. I get up, I turn to my nightstand, I drink a full glass of water, I have a glass right next to my bed. So I've done two great things already before I even get out of bed. I stand up
Mm.
and raise my arms, touch my toes. I do that 3 times. Now I've created movement in my life. I've stretched. I'm waking up my body. I'm telling myself, like I'm having a great day. So where your energy goes, right? The happiness flows, or however you want to say it. Sometimes I say it
Yeah.
differently. So, and it just gets you in that good mindset, and you start feeling accomplished, rather than how I used to wake up and my alarm would go off and I'm like, oh crap, snooze. Oh crap, snooze again, right? 30 minutes later, I'm like, this
Yeah.
sucks, I'm late. And, when you start your day off crappy, you end up having a crappy day.
Hmm.
So again, just, snag that little morning routine. It's quick and easy. I'll show it to you. Um,
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of funny. Like, I feel like women are better at romanticizing the little things than men are, and I say that because it was like a joke on the internet for a while that it's like, girls like celebrate, oh, I drank my water, like, oh, I got out of bed, like, yay, and it was funny how like guys would react to that because they're like, oh my god, give me a break. And it's like, no, like, celebrate those little things, because when you celebrate the minute details of your life, like you're going and doing the thing when you're not feeling 100% yourself, I truly believe that people will start to like get it almost addicted to, like, oh yeah, like I'm celebrating life every single day. And for me, it took the cancer, part of my life, like having leukemia when I was 7, like just getting up and getting out of bed was such a win for me. And I was so grateful for that. And it's taking those concepts into everyday life. And then it's like, oh yeah, I got up, I made my bed. That's an awesome like accolade, like, oh, I got up, I made my bed, I stretched, I meditated, oh, I treated myself with Reiki. Like, that's self-love. Um, I worked out and I felt like a really strong masculine guy. Like, you got to romanticize those small wins in life, because if you don't, life's going to beat you down. And we want to enjoy this human experience as much as possible. So,
Oh, absolutely,
I love it.
absolutely, and I love, you and I had this conversation about Reiki and about how my parents are Reiki masters,
Yeah.
and it took me a while to get into that energy work of it. I'd been doing energy work for a long time, but I hadn't honed it in and put it into a
Mm,
practice. And so that's the thing. Life is a practice when we put it in a certain context. Again, not in a box, but in a context of, I can practice this today. I can practice self love. I can practice, working out. I can practice when you're talking about the masculinity part, whatever's important to you, practice that. Whatever you're not good at, practice that. Whatever you want to get better at, practice that. Because doctors have a practice. Massage therapists have a practice. That's what we
mm.
do. And I remember distinctly one of my vice presidents when I was in the corporate world. He would roll up in this really slick Mercedes, and so many people wanted to be like him. And I was like, oh man, maybe one day I can be in that position, and I aspire to that. And I looked at his license plate and it said arrived. And I took a step back, and I remember having this feeling going, if you've arrived, there's no other place to go because you're at your peak. The only place to go is down. And
Mm,
that mental shift that I had then, I went, man, why don't you enjoy the journey on the way? Because if everything sucks to get to your goal, what's the point in having that goal? I know
yeah.
people that have a lot of money, and I deal with them on a daily basis. And when we have these deep conversations, they're not talking
Hmm.
about how much money they have. They're talking about how they're connecting at their kids, baseball game. They're
Mm.
talking about this, this amazing meal that they learned how to cook for their spouse. I mean, they're talking about these moments because moments are experiences. And you can
Yeah.
accumulate wealth, you can accumulate all the toys and balls and whistles and all the stuff in life, but if you can't enjoy it, what's the point? And I think that's where a lot of people are starting to realize and shift to. Don't get me wrong, money is important. Money can get you lots of
100.
things. It can open
Yeah.
lots of doors, but so can relationships. And when
Yep.
we have key relationships and we enjoy them, that's where that, that angst and that tenseness in our lives tends to fall away, because we have somebody to go, hey, I got this really bad diagnosis of whatever ailment it is. Are you going to support me? And we're just celebrating the anniversary of my friend's, son's passing. And it's the day after my birthday. And so we celebrate my birthday one day and then to celebrate his passing the next day. And just that gamut of emotions is tough, but at the same time we have a good support system. And when you have those, again, relationships and connections, money can't buy that.
Mm. Man, that's so true. Money, it's interesting. I think of money as just an energetic exchange. It's just where it's meeting you in life. But when you make that your obsession, and you try to fill like a hole within yourself, that's where I think a lot of like wealthy people miss the mark. Because you're talking about, yeah, when people see you and they meet with you, they don't. Part of the reason that healers are a unique subset of people is because you could attract the wealthiest people, but they don't care about how much wealth you have. And I'm talking about like you, Sarah, or me, Cooper, because like I've went on dates with women that were way like financially better than I was. I've had clients that were wealthier than I am. Um, but like the thing that was always stated was, man, I wish I had your sense of security or your sense of peace within yourself, talking about like me. And I'm like, I never wrapped my head around it till like I actually started working deeply with wealthy people that um they they were curious about Reiki. That's kind of what got me into that. And it's just like they never healed that inner child aspect of them. And I find that such a unique just concept of healers now kind of getting into this corporate America space. I love that Reiki and kind of like holistic services are creeping into like corporate America and like employees and like just like certain demographics of people that were not even open to it, or I didn't even know what Reiki was, like maybe till like a few years ago. Like it was a new concept and I was in my 20s. Like I had no idea what Reiki was. But it's cool because um people are seeing like, oh, I got money, I got status, I got success, I got fame, but I'm still like a shell of a human, and I don't care about that anymore. Like the money can enhance my life in certain aspects, but like you said, like if you're not connected with your kids, or you're not connected with your wife or your partner, or you're not connected with your friends, and you're insecure in some ways, it's like, well, then who cares, And actually, one of my favorite quotes, I think it was in the book The Psychology of Money. Yeah, it was in The Psychology of Money. This guy, the guy that wrote the book, he saw a guy with a Ferrari. He was driving a Ferrari, and and the guy like got out of his car, and like this guy next to him, shouts at the guy with the Ferrari, "Hey, that's a really cool car." He didn't care about his name. He didn't ask about he didn't care about the guy. He just cared about the car. And that was such a huge process for me as I read that line, because I'm like, who gives a shit what kind of car I drive? I want people to remember me as like, that's Cooper. Like that's Cooper. That guy loved his family, his friends, his wife, his kids. You know, when I get to the wife and kids part of my life, but like that's what matters. It doesn't matter that if I drove an Aston Martin or a Lamborghini, because it's just going to be a guy with a Lamborghini or an Aston Martin. You know what I mean? So it's it's interesting. And I guess like to bridge into working with stress, like techniques and stress relief. I know you kind of just talked about like your morning routine. Is there any other techniques from your book that our audience could try right now in this moment?
Sure. The fact that these are 2-minute techniques, there's so many of them,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're just trying to figure out your core values or whether you're trying to like, just get over anxiety in the moment. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of goes, an A to Z of these different techniques. But one of the things that I find that when people start getting really anxious is I kind of combo this really great technique. Um, when we start to get anxious, what do you feel? You start feeling your heart to pounding. You start
Mm.
feeling shortness in breath, right? And you start kind of going, okay, what's happening? Maybe your mind's spinning. Maybe you can't just calm it down. Uh, Maybe you're in a moment where you're about to, get on a podcast, give a speech, talk
Mm-hmm.
to somebody, go on a first date, whatever that is. And sometimes you can't find the words, and sometimes you can't think straight, right? So I combo these three things, and I'll try and explain it for those of you that aren't watching this. But you have you have your temples. So if you take two fingers, your index finger and your ring finger, and you go from the center of your forehead and just go out toward the edge of your forehead, and you find kind of the soft spot, that's your temples. So a lot of times when people start getting headaches, it starts getting a tension headache right through here. So to help calm your mind, just do little circles with, again, your ring finger and your index finger. Those little circles will help just to relieve the physical tension around your head, and it'll start to calm your mind. And then drop your fingers down to the edge of your jaw. You'll find kind of a little lump on each side. This is your masseter muscle. This is the strongest muscle in your body. And what that does is once you start relieving that, again, physical tension relief, but it also will help you to go, okay, what am I saying? And draw that awareness and attention to your words. And then take a little soft fist. So just put like a little fist, and whichever hand is easier for you, put it at the center of your chest. Make little circles. This is your CV17 pressure point in acupressure. And in Eastern medicine, it helps to calm your body and helps to center and ground you. So just like, when you have your animal, dog, cat, and they come up to you, or even a little child, and you start rubbing their chest, it starts to calm them down, right? So if you use these three things in combination, that can take less than 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever you want that to be. You can do it longer if you want to. But those three things, separately or together, will help calm your mind, calm and find your words, and physically just ground yourself. And that's a quick and easy technique to do. And in combination with a box breathing. So, box breathing is just breathing in for a count of four, holding it for a count of four, and letting it go for a count of four. And doing it on equal sides will help you focus your breath and, again, help yourself to ground. So, whether you're driving or whether you're, face to face on that first date, it doesn't look weird. You can do it, in your head, or you can just physically do it. And
Mm.
if you need to excuse yourself, hit the restroom, takes a minute. So you can do it anytime, any place, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and speaking of, like, if you go hit the restroom, be mindful of when you're washing your hands. After you've used soap and water and everything, the cleanliness part of it, turn the water to cool. Turn the water to cool and just take an extra 10 seconds. As you're wringing your hands out, it will help to cool your body. It will help to ground you. And so,
Wow.
like, these little techniques, it doesn't have to be weird, it doesn't have to look odd, it doesn't have to be, let me go set something up and get in a quiet space and meditate for a half hour. We don't have to do that anymore. If we have these quick and simple tools in our tool belt, we can pull it out at any time and help us be in the best place we can be.
Wow, that was that was enlightening for me in so many different ways. Man, it gets me thinking of, yeah, that's one thing that had me curious about this conversation with you today. People like, and this is just social media, and these are people just trying to, like, come off in a certain way of, this is how I became successful, where people talk about they wake up at like 4:30 and they do, a meditation, and they, listen to an audiobook at double speed, and, like, they have this like ridiculous morning routine that's like 2 hours, and then instead of like, and people are just like, how can I get behind that, or whatever. And I love your point here, because you don't need a 2 hour routine every day to be aligned. Like, you don't need it to be enlightened. You don't need it to be like as meticulously successful. You don't need it to be a millionaire. That's not how it works. And I like that you stated, like, you can take like 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and you can reset yourself in real time. And it really does work, because I've had moments like that. The breathing is where I kind of use it, especially when for some reason where it's hard for me to like sleep. If I left something on the table in terms of some task I didn't complete, and I was like, okay, it's not going to get done today. That's okay. But sometimes the mind just want to, plays that trick on you. So I like to hold it's kind of like box breathing. I breathe in for 4, but I'll hold that breath for a pretty long time. And I notice, like, it won't happen on the first round, but like once I get to like the fifth or sixth round, I notice like my brain just like turns off. And it's very crazy to think like all it did was take like a few deep breaths, hold the breath, let it out, and your mind just like stops working, and it's like a beautiful thing. You're like at peace.
Right.
So
You're
that
you're
was really cool.
absolutely Yeah, you're absolutely in that present moment, which is fantastic. And when
Yeah.
you do want to relax, and when you're going into that sleep state, or any meditative state, or in trying to get into REM, is when you let your breath out longer than you're inhaling, so
Mm,
that exchange on the back end, that helps to calm you even more. So the box breathing is going to help you be present in the moment, but that letting out the breath will help calm your mind, help calm your body to go into
mm.
that sleep state. So absolutely. So, it's amazing how, again, you're utilizing these techniques, and sometimes we don't even know we're doing it. But then when we get kind of, in the angst of moments, we forget about the small things.
Yeah.
And yeah, we don't have to do, 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day of anything like that, because, I get 2 hour massages, but I don't get them every single day. My body doesn't need it. I would love it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
I mean,
great.
hey, you're not gonna get any complaints from me.
Right? I mean, most people won't complain about that. But,
Yeah, right.
most of us have more, things we want to accomplish during the day. And we don't have the luxury of having that amount of time every single day to do those things. So if we, once a month, do a 2 hour meditation, if we once a month get the 2 hour massage, or once a week, whatever that is for you, whatever you're needing at the time, it
Hmm.
really comes down to that. What is your body needing and wanting? And what's going to be the most beneficial for you? Sometimes it's being productive and getting all the tasks done. Sometimes it's productivity means resting, staying in bed, hydrating, and watching a movie. Sometimes it's those two things
Yeah.
are equally as important.
Yeah. I love that. I think, yeah, it's so interesting the way we've progressively gotten into this like hustle culture 24/7. Like, you always need to be doing something, you always need to be networking, you always, and or you always like need to be like reading books, and you know chasing enlightenment, like all those things. And yeah, it's like sometimes, yeah, it's just drinking your water, and yeah, just watching like some TV. Like, actually, where I kind of get that release in like how do I say this? It's not toxic. It's more just like it's my matrix, quote unquote release. I like to watch superhero shows or like superhero movies. Those are like kind of my thing, whether they're animated or like not animated. And that like really brings it home for me. Like it really brings a sense of like nostalgia and inner child presence. So that's why I love to do it. And I always feel super rejuvenated the next day. And yeah, I just think like yeah, we tend to overcomplicate some things that don't need to be overcomplicated, and it doesn't need to be uh, a routine thing. Like you said, you don't need to get a 2 hour massage every day. It would be fun to have, but like it's not necessary. You don't need to meditate 2 hours a day. It's also not necessary. It's more just like practicing good habits and just being consistent with what works for you, and what I guess doesn't work for you. So it's important to keep it realistic. And so you have a lot of certifications, which is, I mean, I love it. I'm a constant learner. I love learning new things. I'm actually looking at hypnotherapy myself in terms of certification, just because it brings more of a tool belt. But so your certs are in Reiki, LMT, licensed massage therapist. I know you mentioned being a personal trainer, and you're a licensed hypnotherapist. So what inspired you to get to this point in your life? Because like you have such a deep, intricate, like spiritual knowledge, obviously with your Reiki, master parents. Um, but like you've had quite the journey from you thought you were going to be in this industry, hospitality, and then, you got into like PT and like, all those things. But like, so like what inspired you to do what you do now and love what you do now?
You can say it's a lot of trial and error. You can be simple
Always. It's
and
always
say it
trial
like
and
that,
error.
right?
So true.
I would love to tell you that I went on this enlightenment journey and this path, and I went, let me just, do all of the healing modalities. I'd love to tell you it started off like that. It didn't. It
Hmm.
didn't. I mean, when I was younger and I wanted to help other people, I thought, oh yeah, making a lot of money would be great. And what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to, get good grades, go to college, get my master's degree, maybe a PhD, whatever that is, and climb the corporate ladder and become the vice president of a hotel or casino. Or
Yeah.
I thought that. My dad was in hospitality, and those are great things, and I love that. If that's what your path is and you love it, that's fantastic. But it wasn't in alignment with who I was. And when
Mm.
you're out of alignment, something happens. And you probably wouldn't say at age 7 something was out of alignment, that's why you got cancer. You probably wouldn't say that. But there was some kind of dysfunction that happened, right? Whether it was genetic or environmental or whatever.
Yeah.
We get diseases, we have dis-ease in our lives and in our bodies,
Dis-ease. Hmm.
right? And for me, it was I had GERD, so I had some gastrointestinal challenges. I had heart palpitations, I had panic attacks. I have an autoimmune dis-ease called vitiligo, like Michael Jackson had. My pigment started to deteriorate. All these things start happening, and when you don't realize what's going on and the pattern goes over and over again, the stress cycle over and over and over, it starts to amplify, and it starts going, hey, are you going to take care of this? And when you don't, it amplifies even more and even more and even more. So it took me to get burnt out and having my hair fall out, having the heart palpitations, having it just right in my face, slap me and go, hey, Sarah, do something different. And, it created stage 4 endometriosis. And I didn't realize that I had a tear in my knee. I ended up, tearing my shoulder. I mean, when you start having these medically, necessary type things go in your life, if you're not paying attention to it, it will exacerbate and it will continue. So the longer version of the answer that you're looking for is that I just started going, how do I help myself? Where do I start? And starting, there's times I couldn't get out of bed. Coop, I mean, you were talking about like when you were going through the things that you went through, getting out of bed was a win. And I remember those
Hmm.
days. And we take it for granted when we can just jump out of bed and we can go. And but when we remember those times we couldn't get out of bed, it's more of an inspiration. And so I started collecting, knowledge and different things to go, how do I help me, but how do I help others that have that ailment, or what's going on for them. And I was in the best shape of my life at, I'm probably about 25. No, I'm probably about 30. 30 is when I got the vitiligo. And um, I was running half marathons. I was climbing up and down mountains. Like, I was in great shape. And I had lost 30 pounds and, got up from behind the desk, all of those different things. But my stress level was still skyrocketed because the relationship that I was in no longer served me. We were on different pages. We weren't getting along. We were not
Mm.
compatible anymore. But I stayed in that relationship for 17 years. 17 years. That was a
Mm.
long time to be in a relationship and it not work for half the time. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But I looked
Hmm.
great, and I created another business and I was, doing different things. But then when I went, okay, it's not about just the health. It's not just about the nutrition. It's about the emotional connections, about the spiritual, fulfillment, and whether that be, enlightenment on a level of religion or spirituality, or just who you have become. All of that together, that's what matters. And it's not all going to be balanced at the same time. We're going to have kind of these ebb and flows. But if we, work on all of the different things to keep everything elevated, that's when we go on a bigger and longer and higher and further trajectory. And that's when you start attracting the things you want in your life. When we're trying to, go get everything, when we're trying to get the money, when we're trying to get the relationships, the person or the entity on the other side feels that, and they're retracting. They're going, oh no,
Yeah.
that's not attractive. I don't want that, and it repels them. But when we're secure or when we're fulfilled,
Yeah.
people go, oh, like you were talking about earlier, somebody wanted the security that you were showing or that you were displaying because they didn't have it. So we see in others what we need or want. We're like mirrors, and what we put out there really does come back to us. So if you're a hateful person and you're talking and you're blaming everybody, what are you doing? What's the hate that you're having inside of your own self? So
Mm.
it's that mirror. What and when I wasn't finding the answers, I had to put that mirror up and go, Sarah, what aren't you seeing? And that's when I started getting, again, more certifications and learning more, and not to collect certifications, because although that's fun and I love learning, but how are you utilizing this material and information? And are you just letting it go to waste, or are you actually practicing it? And that's why I continue to not only create create more courses and classes to help people, but I want to have that energetic exchange. And that's why I love all my clients, because, I gain so much from them as they're
Mm.
gaining and learning and growing too.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. It really is just crazy how people, when I got Reiki attuned, I really opened up my intuition and people started opening up to me in a way of, this is who I am. These are my limiting beliefs. And it's actually quite astounding how I think when you are open and empathetic and like it is in your body language too. I think body language is such a, like, it's such an underrated form of communication, because when you give off a certain language with your body and present yourself physically to someone, so like people will open up and like you've never met the person before. And that's, I think that is such a unique gift that most people need to tap into, especially now. I think empathy, driving, and leadership is going to create better companies and a better work environment. Um, because right now, just my opinion, I think corporate America is crumbling. And part of that is lack of leadership, lack of conscious leadership. And it's like you can destroy the whole system, you can burn the whole system down. But the problem is when you burn systems down like that have been together for so long, like that's how people like die. Like that, like if you took the healthcare system and you turned it upside down and then burned it, like people would die because like people really have to rely on the system right now. It's why like I used to be like burn it all to the ground type of guy, but now as I've learned and matured, it's like how can we just work with this system, navigate the system, make the system better? And if the system doesn't want to improve, how can we just be able to like create something of ourselves to bring people to this healthy way of living in a sense.
It's
Um,
that's so true. That's so
yeah.
true. One of the things we talk about in neurolinguistics is the most flexible person wins. And what I mean by
Hmm.
that isn't just, the physicality of like,
Not
how
just
far you can
yoga.
be stretched. Right, exactly. Although you feel great with that.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah,
think
for
about
sure.
it. Yeah, think about it. Going back to the box is if you're regimented and you're only thinking inside of a box,
Mm,
you can't take that system that you're talking about, in this case healthcare. You can't fix it because you're not flowing with it, you're not finding what is effective, and then flowing with, okay, now if we move over here and have the flexibility, and not to compromise your core values or anything like
mm,
that, but to have the mutual understanding of coming together with insurance companies, with providers, with clients, with patients, right? And you make it a win-win. That flexibility of creating something new becomes easier rather than burning it to the ground that you're talking about. I mean, look what's
mm,
happening, and not to be political, but look what's happening in the US government,
yeah.
where the infighting and everyone's tearing each other down as opposed to finding that common ground and lifting each other up. And when we find the
100%.
commonality, the common unity for a community, right, we see people thrive. And we see, go back to caveman times, we have hunters and you have gatherers. The collection of the two together create that community. Not everybody can be a hunter, not everybody can be a gatherer, because if you were, then there's a gap. And
Yeah.
so that flexibility of coming together really, I think, proves your point of what you're talking about, of rebuilding.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what, so like your like demographic of client, like your client avatar, what does that look like? I'm curious because like just from like this conversation with you, and where you live, because I know you have a virtual business, but I know you also have in person clients as well. From what you were discussing with me before, um, like what is your client avatar look like generally speaking? Like what's the background?
Well, essentially for me,
Mm-hmm.
the clients that have been attracted to me lately have been, kind of where I am or where I've been. Essentially, 40 plus, midlife, people that are the next chapter of their lives, going, hey, maybe I'm just leaving a relationship and entering a new relationship, or, going from one career to the next chapter of their career. It seems to be that next chapter, and when we move into a different phase of our lives, sometimes we feel deflated or don't have a lot of energy or any of those different things. So I help, midlife leaders to be recharged, and, just finding that recharge of inspiration or momentum in their lives. Again, career, relationships. Uh, I was talking to you before about self awareness and communication, a book that we just produced. My partner and I just produced, because a friend of ours her and her husband died, and she also had three kids, like my other friend. But in this case, she had written a book based on NLP techniques, neuro linguistic techniques, and it really helps people to have healthier connections and communications in their lives. And I'm finding that the way we're communicating, there's a gap. There's a gap of what someone's trying to convey and the listener on the other end's not understanding. So we need to bridge that gap. And so that's what many of our clients have been coming to us lately about is how do I get my point across without a conflict? How do I ask my boss for, either a raise or, um, to have time off, or sometimes it's something very little, and sometimes it's very, very a big next chapter in their lives. So, long story short, what's that next chapter in your life? Where do you want to recharge? And is it in relationships? Come see us. If it's in your career or emotional status and connection, that's what we help people with too. So that's basically my avatar, and it is men as well. But what seems to uh, be moving, in the direction of where we're going is a lot of women in that next phase of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see women. I mean, all my Reiki clients have been women. I haven't worked on one guy ever. Actually, sorry, I've worked on one male, and that is it. Everything has been female, which, I don't mind. Obviously, working with women is a very beautiful experience. I think it actually creates more empathy towards women. And that's like another thing too that I've enjoyed about Reiki is unlocking that empathy towards people that are going through different things. Because schizophrenia was something that I had from a textbook definition, I understood schizophrenia. But when I did Reiki on someone with schizophrenia, I realized how real that experience is just by connect, because when you do Reiki, you connect with your energy field of the other person. So that means you tap into this person's thoughts, feelings, word, everything. Like you are connected, and it's a beautiful experience. But this person with schizophrenia, like I have never heard so much yelling in my head than when I worked on that person, and like I got a headache like immediately, and I was like, oh my gosh, and like helping that person, be able to conquer schizophrenia, um, and be able to not abandon the medication completely, but be able to like lighten doses. Like that to me was like that was just a really unique experience. And quite frankly, it's one of those experiences that you remember the most. Like when you're starting out and you see the tangible results of these different modalities. Um, but like I said, yeah, just the empathy portion of like feeling through these experiences. But I wish men were more open to these experiences. I don't think we're there yet. Um, I think we'll get there eventually. It's just going to take time, and it's going to take patience.
And I agree with so much of that. And I'll tell you that more women talk about it and more women will seek that. More men will seek how to make more money, and women will typically seek how to make me feel better. Uh,
Yeah.
in, 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 in just the experience that I've seen in lots of people. But I think the secret is, though, Coop, is that there's definitely a lot of men that won't touch the energy work or getting in touch with different sides of themselves.
Hmm.
But just like Dale Carnegie, Think and Grow Rich, when you start tapping into the secrets of successful people, more and more men are finding that in themselves. More and more men are going, I know how to make money now. One of my first private clients, he was in the car dealership world,
Mm.
and I said, did you know that you were going to be a multimillionaire when you were younger? And he said, yep. And I said, wow, great. Is it easy to make $1 million for you? And he goes, well, now it is. He goes, the first million was the hardest. But once you do it, you know the pattern, you know what it takes, even if it's a different business, whatever it is, you've broken that threshold is what it is. It's not about the
Right.
money. It's you've broken the barrier. And so more and more men that I'm speaking to, high powerful, very successful, lots of money, men are saying, hey, that's not enough for me anymore. I want the relationships. I want to feel good about myself and not just in an outward appearance way, but I want to feel good about my relationships and, um, like we were talking about earlier with the spouse, with children, with whomever.
Yeah.
And they're tapping into more energetic work. They're tapping into their feelings. They're tapping into these different things, but they're not talking about it. They're not talking
Right.
about it to their friends. They're not talking about it with their employees, because just like Think and Grow Rich, if you hold on to that and it's behind the scenes, you can still do it. And people aren't making fun of you. People aren't going, wow, that's weird or anything like that. But it works. I mean, think about meditation. Lots of people didn't talk about meditation for a long time. But now when you go, okay, now some of these gurus are going, meditate for 2 hours. Now it's become in the mainstream, but people have
Yeah.
been doing it for centuries. Monks have been doing it for centuries, right? So people are starting to do it, and we're starting to kind of break that mold,
Yeah.
but it's going to take a while for people to actually talk about it.
Yeah, I think men see money in three dimensions. I think women see money in five dimensions. I really do think uh, the woman that can balance the masculine and feminine trait of harnessing the energy to make money, and then the proactive action to make money. Um, like that is a very strong woman right there. Um, and then vice versa, a strong man, he has the work ethic already, but the problem is like you have to see your abundance in the 5D first before you get to the 3D. And I realized that through EMDR therapy. Like going to my therapist, I realized I work really hard. I like have burnt myself out over and over again in my life because all I cared about was success, all I cared about was awards, all I cared about was accolades, but I never loved myself in the fifth dimension. And then once I like took a step back from working so hard and I went into the 5D and healed the 5D and then went and believed in myself in the 5D, it's like you work less to achieve more in that aspect. And that's the recipe. Like you shouldn't have to work so hard to get to where you want to get to. It's more just like it's all just like your mindset getting there. And obviously you have to be consistently working on that for sure, but it doesn't have to be working because like if you ask a man how to make more money, usually, not all, but usually men will be like you got to work more hours, you got to like put in more jobs, like you got to, do this, do that. If you ask a woman that, it's more just like, well, you need to like believe in yourself and you need to like look inward and like, just have this, thought process of I am worthy of all this. And when you mix the two together, that's the recipe for success. Um, so I think, yeah, men are starting to open up more in that regard. And it all just depends on demographic too. I think young men still don't understand energetic work. Uh, but I do think more, yes, are waking up to it. And high level people like know that this stuff is real. This like energetic work and spiritual work. If you ask successful people, um, they turn to the spiritual work when they're like, okay, I've had a lot of success, I've made a lot of money, but like, well, why do I have a block? Like, why am I stuck now here? Like, how do I get to that next level? And it's like I'm doing all these things, but then they realize it's something deeper, and that's when they turn to energetic work because that's the piece they're missing. It's that fifth dimension stuff. So yeah, I think the people that can grasp the 5D will grasp the 3D as well. But if you only grasp the 3D and you're not looking at the 5D, you're missing out on a whole lot of opportunities.
Yeah, there's so much out there that is energetic. Going back to what you were saying earlier about money being an energetic exchange, we're all energy. Everything
Mm-hmm.
is, and either we're growing or we're decaying in that energy. We're attracting it or repelling it, because you can't hold on to energy. You can harness it and you can utilize it, but it's still moving. It's not just staying in one place. And when it
Mm-hmm.
does stay in one place, it gets stagnant and it doesn't feel good. But I mean, and just to put it into perspective for people that don't understand the energy part of this, is to make it simple, is you and I are having this conversation. We're not in the same room. You're listening to this or watching this, and you're not in the same room. This is being on a digital level, on an energetic component, and then being compressed and then being expressed for you to hear it, see it, and to internalize it. And we can be across the room, or we can be across miles and miles and miles away from each other. That's
Yeah.
the power of energy. And it's amazing how, because we have technology, we get it and go, okay, here's a microphone, here's a camera, here's a video, here's a laptop, or however you're viewing this, or taking this in. But we can't understand a lot of times because we can't put it into words. We can't understand that I can think about my mom, you know 20 miles away, and go, man, my mom doesn't feel good right now, because we're
Mm.
tapped into each other's energy. And
Yeah.
do I know exactly what her thoughts are? No. Have I connected to her that way? Absolutely. And other people, it's like that intuition that you get, and you go,
Same.
oh man, I should call Coop. Oh crap. And then something happens. You're like, see, I should have called my friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you get those twinges, and you second guess yourself. You second guess your gut. Your body's talking. You're second guessing it. But when you start tapping into it and start listening and go, oh, maybe I should trust that, because you fine tuned it. And that importance of boundaries and energy when you're talking about working with your client, and you taking on that headache. If you're an energy worker, or if you're in the healing realm, just know that when you create strong boundaries for yourself, you protect your own health, well-being,
Yeah.
and energy. And when you can tap into that, and we've got an exercise where we can show you how to do that. But when you do that, you stay fulfilled, and you are not using your energy. You just become a conduit, and you're not utilizing or depleting yourself. And you can still have energy for the next person, or the next thing in your life, rather than being deflated. I know people that get on the phone and talk to a lot of people. They're peopled out, right? We get that a lot, because we need to fill up our own energy, right? because
Yeah.
because we don't have that energetic boundary. So that's super important too, to recognize, and to actually practice also.
Mm. Yeah, my body temp is always super warm, and people are always mesmerized by it, and I truly believe it's just because I got a lot of energy, like all the time. Like I do have a lot of energy flowing, and that's why Reiki, I think, has been such a fun practice for me, and I was able to get the hang of it pretty quickly. And obviously, I do my own study. I read a lot of books and like look at a lot of things to enhance my craft. But when I do Reiki, my hands are like, it's funny. People talk about like, oh, your hands are like on fire. And I'm like, that's just because the energy is moving. Like it's just being a conduit for those people. And I did struggle for a while. Um, my own health, I definitely felt drained after sessions because like I didn't protect myself well enough. And figuring that out and how to protect myself, doing gasso. Gasso was the 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 simplest thing that I'm like, why didn't I? But I learned about it, but I never understood how powerful gasso really is. Like every morning before you get into like Reiki sessions, and like that protection of energy is so crucial. And when you tap into others, you also tap into parts of yourself that you didn't even know you had, which I think is really fun. um, and it's fun that we can communicate about this in a healthy way. And so with communication, so I actually want to take a step back real quick to the book that you published for your friend. Um, how hard was that for you?
It was one of the hardest projects I've done in a very long time.
Yeah.
Um, you know, writing my own book and putting my stories into my book was a culmination of 10 plus years. Putting together and producing my friend's book was not anticipated, not expected, and it was difficult to want to honor her legacy, Kat's legacy, and to know that if this book does well, all the proceeds from this book are going to support her three children, and the youngest one just barely being a teenager. Um, it was hard. It was hard to muster up that. It's hard to put into words, because um, I want this so much to. I want to discuss this with my friend and have my friend hear, but I put on the cover of the book a white ripple of water with a feather as the ripple, because we all can create a ripple effect in our lives. And my friend Kat was a Reiki master, a massage therapist. We did our NLP work together, our hypnotherapy work together, and we did it side by side. And I talked to her just about every single day for the last several years, and we bounced so much off of each other that now that she's in a different spiritual world, that's a tough thing. And not just, I mean, it's not about me. Um, in the bigger picture, it's about me just trying to put this book together and doing well for her and her family, but I can only imagine what's going on for her children. And not only did they lose their mother, but they lost their father the same fateful night. They both got killed, and life can change in a second. And that's kind of what that meant to me is what do you do after tragedy? And I honestly had to use my techniques in my book to help ground myself, to help get me through that stress in my life. And now I get to teach what's in this book. I get to teach about communication and about how to create healthier relationships. But it starts with self, and that difficulty of going, I can just put this book out and not do anything with it, or I can put this book out and teach it, create this legacy, and continue the work. Because somebody said, 4 generations from now, people aren't going to know you, they're not going to know me, but they're going to know the work that we did if we continue that
Mm.
legacy. But they're not going to know who Sarah is, they're not going to know who Coop is, you know but if we create this ripple effect of change and healthiness and that common unity, we can make it last for a very long time, over generations. And
Hmm.
so that's how significant and heavy this was for me to kind of take on. So it's that bittersweetness of, like, I'm so happy to be able to take this challenge on, but also so completely sad and utterly emotional, um, that my friend isn't here. And you know we've all had experiences where we've had friends or family or somebody close to us pass on, and how do we honor them, how do we take them forward and move on. um, and so that's what this signifies to me. And if you see yourself in that situation too, you know part of what this book is that self-awareness and communicating with yourself. So thanks for asking about that, because as we talked about before, again, the proceeds go to her children, and it's an important thing to pass on, healthy communication relationships.
Yeah. Um, thanks for sharing that. It's not easy to discuss, these types of topics, especially going or just like the way that all progressed. I'm sure was really hard, because communication was the kind of recipe for this situation that you were talking about. And communication is so key. I've lost four, no, actually five friends to suicide, all males, like all men, and from high school to college to after college. And the only regret I ever had was around communication with those. Like I never reached out to some of those guys and just tell them I love them, before passing away. And it's almost like communication is just the recipe to resolve things, and I think communication right now is also for some people just a challenge. Some people don't know how to communicate anymore. And it's weird. It's like, is it the pandemic? What was it? But it's just it doesn't matter. All that matters is you you got to learn to communicate, and part of that communication is empathy. And empathy is really just tapping into someone's soul, their core, and being able to understand humans on a soul level,
Yeah,
because everyone lights up over different things. Like the soul lights up for different things for different people. And that's the beautiful concept of the human experience, is you get to learn so many different modalities. Like you've learned so many different modalities, but you stayed with the one vision, and the one vision was just healing people. Like, it's just simple as that. Same here. The simple vision is healing people, loving people. Some people, the vision is creating things, because creating things uh, helps them feel happy. They just love creating art, or they love creating some sort of business, or they love creating something of, or creating life, creating children. um, it's creation is can be so many different things to people, but yeah, you can learn so many different modalities, and you can learn so many different things, and you can do so many different things and be a part of all these industries. But the one vision is what your core is. And when you just tap into people's heart space and find out what they truly love, that is where the spark happens, and that's where the growth happens. So I'm glad that you were able to find that heart space to share the the written piece of your friend, because that's
yeah,
not easy.
yeah. Thank you for that, and thank you for that reminder because, when we know what our core values are, and when we elicit that, if we don't know what they are, we can't tap into that, in my opinion, or it's harder to
Hmm.
tap into that. And some of the work that we do when we do our emotional detox is we help people find out what their core values are, and not just what their work values are, and not just they love themselves and relationships, but like really at the true core, like what's important to you. And when we're vibrating at a low level of hate and anger and frustration and sadness, we cannot get to that higher vibration of love and enlightenment and trust. And and it's such a vast difference. So when we bridge that gap, and like we were talking about, like what is that, was it, whether it's a pandemic or whatever created dysfunction or dis-ease in their lives. We went through a trauma as a world. We went through a trauma for over a year during the pandemic, and some people haven't gotten through that and haven't worked that out. But when you move past that trauma, and you know at every level of your life, and bridge the gap again, it feels different. It's different. That you're starting to thrive again. And again, thank you for that reminder. I think that's so important for everybody to hear and have the understanding that you can get through that. And although you're kind of struggling, or maybe you're starting to thrive again, when we let go of that trauma, when we let go of the things that are underneath that we don't even sometimes know about, that's when that true healing can happen. So again, thank you for that.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where when you go through things in life, no matter what the age is, and that's been my thing starting a business. Age has been such a it's been an obstacle for me, just because of like getting into the space I'm getting into. It's like, oh, how can a 27-year-old, 28-year-old almost help me get to like this, aspect of life when I'm like in my 30s and like those sorts of things. And, it's all about perspective. Like that's all it is. I grew up a lot quicker because of like trauma. Um,
Hmm.
like
You
people
did.
that go through significant traumatic experiences as a child, they grow up a lot quicker, they mature a lot quicker, and they kind of understand um, just life from a different lens. And it doesn't make anyone superior. It just makes the perspective different, and it's always good just to have different perspectives because I truly believe I can impact like someone in their 40s or 50s, and then obviously someone in their 40s or 50s can impact me in a certain way too. It's just all a matter of perspective, and I think we all can take note of what everyone has to offer in some regard. And it doesn't matter about your age, it doesn't matter about any demographic that you get targeted for in terms of like it doesn't matter about your race, your religion, sexual orientation. Like it doesn't matter what gender you identify as. What matters is just what lights you up. And I think it's beautiful that you've been able to harness that in such a strong way, and also to help many different groups of people.
Yeah,
So
thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. And, you know, our first connection, our first meeting, we had so many similarities. And I mean, if you look at both of our bios, you go, hey, how can this 40-plus-year-old, author in massage therapy, wellness, healing, what does she have with, connection to this guy who's young and this handsome guy who's in a different world. And then we start talking and we start finding what we connect to, and we start finding what more we have in common than not. And it's created a great bridge, and it created a great bond. And I love this connection that we have. And the last time that we talked, we could talk for hours, and we can continue on and on for a good while. But it's one of those things where two minds collectively help others. Now, whether it's a client and a coach, or whatever the dynamic is, that learning, I love that kind of connection. It's very stimulating, and it helps growth. It helps the growth, because as I said before, we're in growth or we're in decay. And there's too much decay, there's too much negativity, there's too much that doesn't work for us. So when we find that connection and connectivity, let's harness that, let's grow, and let's move forward. I love that. So thank you for having me here, Coop. I love being here.
yeah, no, thanks for hopping on. Thank you for that as well. Thank you for that high praise. I really do appreciate that. It's been just like, yeah, it's been a really great episode of just like, and you've inspired me. Even when with our first meeting, you kind of got me looking into like hypnotherapy and like different other modalities, because like I just think you have so many tools in the tool belt, and I think it only just makes you more knowledgeable, and it just like makes you just more multifaceted and more approachable. I think like people um, can learn from like a healer that knows a lot of different modalities and not just one. And I do think you can be great at multiple modalities, especially like if you've been a practicing healer for as long as you have. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us today, because I think this was such an impactful episode, one of my more impactful episodes that I've been able to be a part of. So thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.